Alright guys, we're back. We're talking about, again, we're in the first chapter, A&P overview, and let's start talking about the acid-base balance. We're going to really get into that when we get to respiratory, but there's some things that we are going to get into. We're talking about acid-base balance and why it is so important to body systems, and more importantly, what happens when the body goes acidic, that it can really mess up the way the body works. It can mess up the way our drugs work. It's not a good thing. But we got to understand the basics of that. So again, electrolytes are substances that release ions into water. Acids are electrolytes that release hydrogen ions into water. And then bases are electrolytes that release ions that bond with the hydrogen ions. Okay? Again, and it's all about balance. And if you are out of balance with that, it can cause major problems. So what is pH? And everybody kind of gets weirded out about this. So it's a value used to measure the hydrogen ion concentration. It's a mathematical shorthand. It's a logarithmic ascension, with a mole representing the amount of solute in a solution. And again, your pH as a solution is defined by the level of acidity or alkalinity. And so it's probably better to show you what those ranges are. So again, it's usually between 0 and 14. 0 being a very strong acid, hydrochloric acid to be precise. 14, a very strong base. Both, by the way, at those levels can do considerable damage to you. 7 is the midpoint. Pure water is a pH of 7. If it's below 7, it's considered acidic. If it's above 7, it's considered alkaline. We kind of made a joke about this in class before, but our normal pH for the human body is 7.35 to 7.45. So, essentially, humans are basic. Yes, that's right, we are. And again, so abnormal fluctuations, guys, it can change the shape of proteins and then changes cellular function. So that's why we were worried about it being not between that 7.35 and 7.45. Again, acidosis is below 7.35, which is what most of our patients get when they get sick. Alkalosis usually higher than 7.45. There are some weird things that might actually happen. Too much IV fluids would be a pretty decent example of that, where they get dehydrated. That would be another really good example. Not per se hypovolemic, but not hemorrhagically hypovolemic. Now, buffers, again, we have chemicals that resist the pH changes in our body. Bicarbonate is our big one, okay? So what it does is it combines with excess hydrogen ions and again, reduces that pH level, makes us back into homeostasis, okay? So, again, this is kind of the scale on a visual level. Again, even like ocean water, by the way, if you stop and think about it, that's extremely basic. Again, when we get down to here, the oven cleaners, of course, that's how they work. Sodium hydroxide, super duper, it will basically slough off your skin. And again, over on this side, strong acids, stomach acids down there with a 1. Again, that's why we have basic tissues around them to protect the stomach lining. Now, so again, organic chemicals, they usually have some sort of element of carbon in them. Remember, carbon's got 4 valence electrons. They can give up or they can accept. As a matter of fact, they do it in all kinds of different ways and patterns. Essentially, it's what gives us, and by the shifting of those patterns is usually when they clump together and form a different type of molecule so that life can exist. Now, again, they can dissolve in water, but it's usually a greater effect in either alcohol or ether. And again, so organic substances that dissolve in water usually do not release ions, by the way. They're non-electrolytic. So that's your organic chemistry. So these guys don't split up usually once they put into water. They usually have pretty solid bonds. They do not contain the elements of, the inorganic chemicals do not contain elements of carbon or hydrogen. And then again, they release ions into water. These are also called electrolytes, or again, inorganic chemicals, electrolytes. So inorganic substances is oxygen, carbon dioxide, salts. Again, water is an inorganic substance. And again, And again, you got to remember that water is what 2/3 of our body roughly, and I would probably know that number because you're probably going to see that later. And again, a solute is any substance that dissolves in water. And again, most metabolic reactions, they do occur in water. That's why we're probably 70% water as an organism. All right. So watery portion of the blood that carries vital substances around the digestive tract. Again, there is a watery portion of that, and they usually have all of these lovely materials in them. So again, oxygen is it transports the blood. It's a fuel for us. And then organelles inside the cells use oxygen to release nutrients, and it also drives cellular metabolism. We have to have oxygen in order to live, okay? It's how we create energy, okay? So carbon dioxide is usually a waste product of ours. Usually we break down sugars. When we break down the sugars, carbon's attached to the oxygens, and then it becomes carbon dioxide. It's then brought back on the bicarbonate ion back to the lung, and we usually expel it. Again, as a matter of fact, we like to measure that because when we measure that, we know that there is actually metabolism going on within a person. So salts are usually compounds that are oppositely charged, and again, they are good for the cells, muscle contractions, nerve impulse conduction. All rely on salts in order to do that. That is part of the makeup. Carbohydrates, that's our fuel, okay? Now, when we break it down, our food into carbohydrate molecules, okay? We break down our food into these, okay? And then your carbon atoms with shorter chains are then called sugars, okay? And again, there's 3 types of sugars that we're going to talk about. The simple sugars, which are monosaccharides, and we should, again, recognize one of these at least. Glucose, that's our primary one, but your fructose, again, found usually in fruits. Galactose, usually in a milk product, and that usually ribose, by the way, it only contains 5 atoms of carbon. Deoxyribose contains 5 atoms of carbon, but the ribose and deoxyribose again have to do with those with our DNA, deoxyribonucleic acids. That's what helps form those acid structures, which basically forms our genetic blueprint. Now, complex carbohydrates, disaccharides, double sugars. Sucrose is an example of that. Polysaccharides, again, contains many sugars, okay? And many sugar units, and a lot of the glycogen that we have in our bodies is a polysaccharide, okay? That we synthesize in order and store it for later use. We use glucagon to break that down in order to return those stores of glycogen back into sugars so that we can use it as fuel. Now, lipids, they do not dissolve in water, okay? They may dissolve in other lipids, oils, alcohols, they can dissolve it. And there's a lot of compounds within that are vital for cell function. Again, fats, phospholipids, steroids. Steroids, again, the lipid that helps help with the building process as well. It speeds up that building process. Triglycerides, again, is usually one glycerol molecule that bonds with other fatty acids. Okay, and by the way, again, it's a major fuel for us. It's one of those steps that form the polysaccharide. Again, saturated fats usually have a lot of saturated acids in it, and those with unsaturated fatty acids, again, we call unsaturated fats. Your phospholipids, again, it's the glycoprotein in the fatty acid chain. And these chains is what usually ends up forming your cellular structures, okay? Those different cellular structures is formed by phospholipids, especially your cell wall. That one is definitely, and we're going to be talking about that next chapter. We start talking about things that go in and out of the cell wall. Again, your steroids, they usually these are cholesterol, estrogen. Yes, cholesterol is a steroid, believe it or not. Oh, it should be good to that. But it helps us to build other structures. And then the same thing with proteins. Proteins, again, help us build their function. They help us produce energy. They also make enzymes, give us our defense or antibodies. Those are protein-based. And then hormonal requirements, again, hormones are protein-based. Okay, and then some proteins can combine with carbohydrates to form glycoproteins. And again, These allow cells to respond to certain molecules that bind to them. Now, there are more than 200,000 types of proteins in your human body. Wow, that's a lot. Keratin, by the way, skin, nails. Collagen, tissues, skin systems. But also inside the muscles, there's collagen fibers as well. Peptides, antibodies, again, antibodies that have also enzymes with them. And then your cellular membrane proteins, okay? So all of these things are made proteins. That's what a lot of our cells do, is they're for about protein synthesis, okay? Now, nucleic acids, again, very large organic molecules composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. And again, that's how we store the molecular information, our DNA chains, okay? And so our DNA chains, again, the deoxyribonucleic acid, that's where it forms the helix type shape, where your RNA, again, guys, is only one strand, just one, and it's usually used in either transfer or messaging or ribosomal information to help transmit the data from DNA. It goes a little bit deeper in that, but for our purposes here, you need to know that the RNA is how they transfer genetic material code. The actual genetic material code is on this guy right here, the deoxyribonucleic acid. All right, a lot to input on that one. This just as a basic overview. I do know and I understand it, but again, make sure that you read up on the chapter a little bit. Make sure that you understand the structure and function. And I'm gonna see you guys on the next one.